Hey everyone, it's Sarita. I wanted to give you an update on my trauma healing journey as well as where I started out to where you've seen my last update. And I thought this would be really important because I have just been reflecting on my journey and where I've gotten to, and I realized that I didn't really have a lot of people around me to encourage me, to help keep me going, because they didn't really know what I was going through. Most of the people in my life are not on any kind of healing journey. They're doing their day to day and they're doing their own thing. And they knew that I was doing these therapies, but they don't really know what that means and what, when I would say I would get stuck or that it was hard or things like that, they didn't really understand where I was coming from. And I thought it was important to share this because there comes a time in your therapy process where things just feel so hard and you don't feel like things are going to shift. You feel like you're in the same spot. Like you'll get relief from like the lens neurofeedback, but you still see your pattern in the way that you think. You still feel attached to toxic situations or toxic people, or you have a hard time pulling away from those situations. And when you're going to therapy and you're doing trauma therapy and you don't see these things changing or shifting, you really start to question, like, am I making progress? Am I spending this money? Am I, going home and post-processing and feeling like shit afterwards and nothing's really happening? I can tell you that something definitely is happening. You may not notice it on the surface, but your nervous system and your body internally, like, you are adjusting. It's adjusting to new information. It's adjusting to new patterns. And everyone's trauma is different. Everyone reacts to trauma differently. And so it's hard to put a timeline on things. And I think it's important to know that because my journey has pretty much been a 10-month long journey. And to make the progress that I've made from 10 months ago to now is significant. What I have processed through and things that I have healed within myself, this could take in a traditional therapy setting, or if you're only going down a spiritual path, like years and years and years. And even with that, years and years and years, you might not even move through it with traditional therapy options. So I wanted to share that with you because I know how difficult it can feel. I know that when you're bringing up some of these things, even though in EMDR you don't go into really a deep discussion about your trauma or the trigger that you're working with, it can still bring stuff up post-processing that when you get home, that's when it might all come out. Like the emotions might all come out, the heaviness, you might cry, and you might feel just not very good. And when you're having session after session and you're just don't feel like you're going anywhere, just trust the process. Know that something is happening, things are shifting. It's just in your process, it's you don't know where it's going to land. You don't know when that change is going to happen, but it will happen. And my last EMDR session, I had a 90-minute session because we decided I didn't really need a lens neurofeedback session. We're pretty much wrapping that up, and the only reason I'm going to do some sessions spaced out is I want to see what my full brain map looks like now after the whole process. I want to see where I've gotten to. And she did show me the map with all of my sites unsuppressed from lens neurofeedback, and every site did show unsuppressed, but there's different maps and there's different things that are measured. And she did say that when she looked at the data she had and why it made sense that it was so sticky and why I just required more sessions, is I had a pattern like a pattern showing in one of the data sets of what I guess is called survivor brain, or they call it survivor brain. So, which makes sense. I do have a significant trauma history, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, to where I was to where I am now, to help kind of encourage you to keep you motivated to keep going with your trauma therapies and overcoming all of these things. And I really started from a place of, so basically I have a significant trauma history from like childhood trauma, and pretty much I started my healing journey in my late 20s, basically. Like, I started to commit to one. I had previously, delved into meditation and other things, but really starting to work on things didn't happen until, I didn't really start until my late 20s. And it did get me some progress. I did reduce basically my anxiety for a number of years, and I didn't have any panic attacks, or I don't even really know some of the things, right? Like anxiety attacks or whatever that I would get. And those significantly reduced when I implemented meditation. I started going to a group meditation where I really trusted the facilitator. It was a very safe space, and that's where I started to open up to people and being okay to talk about things, because you're with people who are going through similar things. So it was a great point for me to start that process, and I stayed with it for some time. And along the way I did some like talk therapy and things like that. I did not find the talk therapy to be very helpful. It's helpful to talk about things, but then it just feels like you're reliving things over and over, and who wants to do that? And then you're triggered all day long, and then you have to try to get yourself regulated again, and you just don't end up getting yourself regulated again. You just stay stuck in this trauma response for, like a week or longer. So that was a thing that I didn't really end up sticking with too long. And then I also, because so if you have a trauma history, or you've experienced traumas that have affected you that haven't worked out in your nervous system and in your brain, like your body have not processed those things, you will often develop health issues, like things that doctors can't really figure out. Like, you go to all kinds of specialists and they can't figure these things out. And I had a lot of those kinds of things. Just from the insomnia I had with anxiety and all of the things I used to experience, I basically was like running on no energy for years. So that did a lot of damage to my body as well. So I wanted to address that, and I found Ayurvedic medicine, and that's when my physical health started to improve. But then I also noticed like my mental health started to improve with Ayurveda as well. So I did experience a profound healing through Ayurvedic medicine, and it's basically like a blueprint for me on daily living, keeping my body's biorhythms in sync with nature, the cycles of nature, because that's how we actually evolved. And in this modern living we have with lights and the ability to stay up all night and be stuck to screens and eat, order a pizza at midnight, It allows you to disconnect from the cycle of nature. And when you disconnect from that cycle, from the natural rhythms and the cycles of the day, that can create a lot of disturbance on the physical level as well as mental, emotional. So Ayurveda really helped me get my daily routines sorted out, help me sort out what foods are balancing for me, which ones are not, how to use spices and herbs for healing my body. And I really just, it's an amazing way to live. I'm not 100% with it all the time. It's easy to fall off of routines and things like that, but if you can stick to it a lot of the time, it can have a significant impact on you. So that was really amazing. And then I went on to study Ayurveda and studied and got my certifications and all this stuff and learned more about myself, healed myself. And then fast forward, I had been in a relationship for a long-term relationship for almost 7 years. And during that time, I was also working quite a bit. And so I started to, I thought I was just attributing it all to just working too much. I started to deteriorate, like my health started to deteriorate. I started to put on weight. I started to look puffy. My skin started to get bad. I started to get exhausted again. And I just had such a hard time just doing basic things. Like, I would be so exhausted that at the end of the night, I just wouldn't even want to get ready for bed. I was too exhausted to even just get myself up after a long day, get myself ready for bed, and get into bed. Like, that's how I used to feel. And again, I attributed this all to my job. And what it turned out to be is that I was sort of subtly, narcissistically abused by my partner for probably my whole relationship, and I didn't realize it, because when I went to my first therapist, who was a trauma therapist, after all this narcissistic abuse that I experienced, she definitely said I had most of the signs of someone who has been psychologically abused by a narcissist. And from what I told her about my partner, just, basic facts, what he does for a living and all this stuff, and she asked me more questions, and when I would answer them, these questions of hers, like how he would interact with me, then when I was saying those things and repeated, like telling her, I was hearing myself, I'm like, that is a mental, emotional abuse. But it's such a subtle thing, because narcissists are very good at subtly abusing people. Like, you don't even know it's happening to you. And how that ties into my trauma history is, I have a narcissistic mother and an abusive mother, and my dad was abusive too. But my mother she's more of the psychological abuser, and which I found was worse, because getting slapped by my dad was, getting slapped by my dad, and yeah, that sucked, but the psychological ongoing abuse from my mom was really bad. And so what happened is, I basically, when it came to my dating history, would reenact dating people like my mother, people who are deceptive, people who lie, people who lack empathy. And I don't know if in the past all these people were narcissists too. I mean, maybe one or two were. I can't really say. A mental health professional specializing in narcissism is really the only person that can diagnose something like that. But what came out of this relationship is my whole world turned upside down. Basically, my sister was in the hospital. She has passed away. She passed away at the end of 2018, and at the same time, I discovered that my partner cheated on me. He got his employee pregnant, and the only reason I found out was because how do you hide a pregnancy? And this was like all happening at the same time. So you can imagine the amount of shock and trauma I experienced. And then I found out that he had just been leading some secret life behind my back for our whole relationship, and he had been unfaithful pretty like throughout our whole relationship. He would introduce girls to me that were apparently his employees, and then he would sleep with them. And I guess this was happening basically throughout our entire relationship, and I had no idea because he was a very good liar. And anytime I would start to get suspicious about anything, like not, he had a very a business that just took everything out of him, like physically, and it was just a stressful business that he has. And when I would start to get a bit suspicious or have questions, like something just doesn't feel right, he would say things to me like, oh honey, that's your childhood trauma, you're just, you react that way because of what happened to you when you were a child. So he would actually, everything that I shared with him on the personal level, he would go and tell. He would like use that against me. That information. Like I would tell him these things, sharing them, thinking I'm telling my partner that I trust. And then he would use those things against me, and he would gaslight me. This is like, gaslighting is when someone is getting you to question your reality. Like say, like I picked up a glass and put it over there, and that person saying, no, you did not pick up that glass and put it over there. And you know what happened. You know that something's not right. And like, that what you're saying is an actual fact. Like it happened. And they keep telling you that it didn't happen. And so he did this to me for years with a lot of things, telling me that it was, no, that didn't happen. I think you're just tired. That's your childhood trauma and all these things. But those things that didn't feel right to me ended up being things that were not right. And that whole time, all those times I was right, those things I was feeling, but he got me to question basically my reality. And so if you can imagine going on for years, and then, the extreme stress he put me through when we were separating is another story altogether. So all of this, like that basically happened. And then I started working with a therapist in EMDR who sort of brought these things to my attention, that, you do have all of the signs of someone who has been very narcissistically abused, like has been psychologically abused. And we started working through EMDR, and then she ended up moving away. She left the province, and so I couldn't find a therapist for basically the rest of the year after that. And then COVID happened, and everything was shut down. And then once things reopened, I found my current therapist, who I've worked with for the last 10 months. So during that time, when I was going through all those things with my ex and my sister passing, I was like non-functioning. I couldn't get I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't get myself to work. I couldn't get in the shower. I couldn't get myself anywhere. I couldn't even eat. I couldn't get myself anything to eat, and I didn't want to eat. I just wanted to waste away. And I'm telling you this because I was really non-functioning. I was in a terrible, dysregulated state for that entire time. Like I could not regulate myself in any way. And I had a lot of depression, the PTSD symptoms, the acute anxiety symptoms I was experiencing. These are all the things that I was going through before I started therapy. And now where I'm at, I have gotten promotions in my career. I have moved up in my career. I have gotten so much more regulated mentally and emotionally. Like, I've never felt this good. I've never felt this calm. I've never felt this healthy, really. And because I'm so much more regulated, I'm making better decisions for myself. I'm in a fitness challenge right now, and I'm doing really well both on the nutrition and the workout side. So I'm really proud of myself for that, to sticking to routines and schedules and doing things. And I didn't think I could get here. Like, after all of those things happened to me, I did not think that I could get here where I am now, to feeling peaceful, feeling good in the day, moving through my day like a calm person. Just these simple things, when you've gone through such horrible things in your life, these simple things, like, you just have so much more appreciation for them. And so I wanted to share this part of my journey with you, because I know anyone that got this far into the video, you have a story. There's a reason why you're struggling with trauma, and it's really hard. And I understand that. But I also believe that if you just keep going with the process, and you're going to have weeks where you feel like shit and you don't feel like things are moving, you will get through it. You just have to stick with it long enough. I think the main reason people don't recover is that they give up at some point along the way. They don't think it's working for them, and then they just give up. So do not give up. You can do this. I've done this. If someone with like my kind of trauma history can do this, you can do this too. And I'll be back to make another video. I'll make it an actual topic instead of this kind of free form thing, because I don't know how many people would actually get through this video. But I hope this is helpful for someone, even if one person finds it and they hear a bit of my story, that it helps you get motivated to also recover and get better and start living a peaceful life. So I will talk to you soon.